Hey guys, so I've been planning on working on a project where I take up the basic Python and introduction to data science, and then an advanced topic on data science in practice using Python as a course. See how this goes. This is the very first episode of Introduction to Data Science with Introduction to Python, and I'll show you what exactly you need to set up, how you need to set up things on a Windows machine, and I'll also discuss how you go ahead with the Mac OS, or if you're using a Linux-based operating system, let's say Ubuntu, and we'll see how it goes from there. So the very first thing is um, the introduction to data science using Python. So Python is a very powerful language that is being used in all sorts of things, from web design to scripting to obviously data science, where you use libraries like pandas and machine learning libraries, NLTK for natural language processing and all of that. So the very first thing I would suggest you to do is download and install Anaconda on your system. So I'll show you in a moment why I prefer Anaconda over, say, development environments like PyCharm, or even a code editor like Visual Studio Code. I'll show you in a bit. So the very first thing you need to do is fire up your web browser and go to Anaconda Python. Just search for it. Click on the very first link that comes up, this individual edition Anaconda. When you go in there, you'd see a bit of introduction of what Anaconda is, a data science toolkit and all that. You can even use it using R. Click on download. So based on the operating system you're using, it can be Windows, Mac OS, or Linux, I would suggest you to download the installer accordingly. So I'm using a 64-bit Microsoft Windows 10, and this would be in Python 3.7. So just click on whichever one works for you for Windows or Mac OS or for a Linux-based operating system. So I have a 64-bit operating system, so I would take this. I already have Anaconda installed on my system, so I don't really need it. But once you're done with this, just follow the instructions on the installer menu step by step, and you should be good. Next, when you're installed, search for Anaconda Navigator. So when you do this, something like this should pop up. Click on this. This will fire up Anaconda on your machine. Let's wait for it. It's loading. Still loading. So, okay, in the meanwhile, I'll tell you why I prefer Anaconda. There's something called Python Notebook. It is a feature that Anaconda has, and I really love it. I'll show you why in a moment. You can integrate a Visual Studio Code, or there's something called a Spider that Anaconda has in your system as well. But I prefer Python notebooks. So this is the Anaconda Navigator. As you can see, I have two environments set. I'll show you what these mean and why you should have different environments for different things in a bit. So let's see. So I'm in the root environment right now. So this is the default environment that Anaconda comes with. And you have a whole bunch of options of what you can do with Anaconda. So you can use Spider, as I was saying, Visual Studio Code, Jupyter Notebook. So I'll use Jupyter Notebook. So when you click on launch, it would pop up as a window in your default browser. So let's say I go to music, and so now click on new. Because I have two different environments, you can see student and root. You should only have a root as of right now. So what this does is, the default environment that Anaconda is installed with, Python 3 or Python 2, it should have that Python version enabled. So I have Python 3. I would click on in the root environment, I want a Python 3 Python notebook. So what basically happens is if you go in here and in the environments, if you'll check, you'll see all the installed packages that are there in the root environment. So based on different things that you're doing with Python, you can directly install, or you can just search for packages in here and install them on your inside the environment. You don't need to run commands via command line. So that's something, it makes it a bit easier. I prefer command line anyway. I'll show you how to do it, do everything that we are doing right now via command line, how to run programs, how to write code and all of that. But yeah, as a beginner, I would suggest going ahead with Anaconda Navigator. So let's get back. So I'll create a new Python file. So if you see right now, this is an untitled file. You can rename this file. So just double click here and let's say first Python code rename. So now it's renamed as this. Now if you look at the interface, you'll see a bunch of stuff in here. The very first thing noticeable is this box. This box is known as a cell in a Python notebook. By default, this cell is of code type. That means you can run Python code in here. You can also have a text markdown. So this is where whatever you enter would be a plain text, a run, we convert, or a heading. So let's say I'm writing a text right now. So I would say this is my first Python program. Okay, so now there are two ways of running the cell. Either you click on run or you hit shift plus enter on your system. So if I click on run, it comes as a plain text and you see a new cell is automatically generated of code type. Now the reason I love using Jupyter Notebook is I'll show you in a minute. So let's write our first line of code. Print hello world. This is the very first thing that you learn in any language. So as I was saying, there are two ways of running a cell. You either click on run or you hit shift enter on your system. So it prints whatever is in the parentheses of the method print. Now, as I was saying before, why I like using Jupyter Notebook, because say you're working as a data scientist, or even if you're working on a side project, you're not even a data scientist, you're just learning something, you're not working on data science professionally, and say you're working with a CVS file that has 12 million records or 30 million records. So if you use something like Visual Studio Code or Spider, what happens is if your program has say like 10,000 lines of code and you change something on the 10,000th line, if you run the program again, it will have to do everything from the top. Okay. What Jupyter Notebook does for you is once you run a step, it is stored until the session is over. So say I set a variable a equals 2, and we'll get into all of this, the variables, the data types, all sorts of stuff in Python later. But as of right now, let's just say that I set a variable a equals 2. Okay, and here we could have loaded a file like a CVS file that had 30 million records or something. So what happens is now a equal to 2 is stored here. Even if I run another command, say I run this is my first Python program. Even if I run this command and then I do print a, the value of a is carried forward from this step to this step. A is safe. So you see, if I had to load a file that contained a lot many records, a humongous amount of data, it would be run here and stored in a variable or in a file, right? In a variable wherever I would be loading it. And then if I make any changes to my code, I would save time on running the code. So this is what Python Notebook is, and that is why I like using Python Notebook. So this is all that I would I have to say for the very first video. I hope you guys install everything, and if you have any questions, please mention it in the comments below, or just let me know. I'll also put up my Instagram and email address. So if you have any questions, you can shoot your emails and I'll look into them and I'll help you out with the setup process. And in the next video, we'll talk about the very basics of Python, the very first things that you need to know: what Python is, why Python came into picture, what are all the kinds of variables we use, what are the data types, and all of that. And then gradually we'll move into NumPy, pandas, which is a very powerful tool for data science. It is like a basic requirement to know pandas if you're going into data science with Python. And pandas is built on NumPy, so you need to learn NumPy in order to unleash Python on anything. Then we'll jump into a bit of visualization to draw prediction charts, bar graphs, uh, drawing box plots, and seeing what the outliners look like, drawing normal distribution graphs, and all of that. And then once we are done with all of those things, we'll dive into data science in practice, where we'll see how to deal with real-time data, as in time series data, how to work with natural language processing, a bit of machine learning, and all that. And yeah, that's it for the very first video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you like this, please subscribe and share it with other people, especially kids who are trying to get into coding, because my main focus is to help the kids who don't have easy enough access to learn programming languages. That is my main audience. So yeah, if you liked it, please subscribe and share it with other people. Thank you.